everyone. Welcome to First United Methodist Church of Baton Rouge. We are going to be joined by two, not just one, but two of our awesome preteens. Caroline and Brannon will be joining us here in just a minute to help us tell the story of Cornelius, a guy from Acts chapter 10. And the big goal of today is to show that sometimes people are different than us, but that's okay. And those differences actually can bring us together. And not only that, but Christ meant for it to happen that way. And what an incredible story to tell right now, that even though we may seem different than somebody else, Jesus calls us to come together. So we are going to wait. They'll join us in just a minute. Here we go. I'm going to start recording, and then I'm going to share this screen with you guys. So here's the first one that you can see. So you've got Coca-Cola versus, let me get both of you there. There we go. You've got Coca-Cola versus Pepsi. So which one would you choose?
Coke.
Coke.
Okay.
Caroline would choose Coke as well. Okay, that was kind of an easy one. Let's go to this next one. Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks?
Starbucks.
Starbucks. Man, there was a Dunkin' Donuts in Houston but I didn't like it more than Starbucks. Okay.
We used to live across, next to Dunkin' Donuts, and we'll always go there for breakfast.
Oh, so it's kind of which one's closer kind of thing? Or would you just still choose Starbucks?
No, Starbucks was expensive, but we used to live by Dunkin' Donuts, and we always went there.
Oh, sweet. Okay, Joker versus Batman.
Joker. I love Joker.
I don't do clowns or anything.
You don't do clowns, so you choose Batman?
Yeah.
Okay, here's a sports one. This is baseball, so Brandon, right up your alley. Boston Red Sox or New York Yankees?
Yankees.
Yankees. Caroline, do you have a preference?
I've seen them both, but I'll do Yankees because Babe Ruth was on the Yankees, so they're probably really good.
Caroline, he's dead.
Okay, here's a brand. We only have two more. Here's a brand one. Nike or Adidas?
Nike.
Nike.
I have Nike shoes, but I really like the Adidas brand, so I don't know.
I'm a big fan of Adidas. I have some Nikes and I have some Jordans, but I prefer
I had Adidas shoes. I had Adidas shoes. I like them. They're really cool and they're really pretty and colorful. I really like them. But Nikes are better running shoe.
Yeah, that's very true. And this last one's an easy one. LSU versus Alabama.
Alabama.
No!
Just kidding, LSU.
Yes, absolutely. I've got kind of an old picture. That's Tyrann Mathieu there, so I liked that. So we see these kind of rivalries. I think you would agree that all of those things, those are two very different things. Coke and Pepsi, very competitive with each other. They're the same market. They're really big in the same market, right? So we saw all of those different rivalries. And the biggest rivalry we can find in the Bible is probably between Jews and Gentiles. And so Gentiles are just people who are not Jewish, right? That's literally what it means. It means that they're not Jewish. And this was just a huge rivalry because Gentiles didn't follow all of the same rules that Jewish people did. And so we see these two groups of people come together in chapter 10. So Brandon, do you want to read verses 1 and 2 for us to get this rolling?
Yes, sir. There was a man in Caesarea named Cornelius, a centurion in the Italian company. He and his whole household were Gentile God worshippers. He gave generously to those in need among the Jewish people and prayed to God constantly. Yeah,
so we just learned a little bit about Cornelius, right? So he was generous, he prayed regularly, he worshiped God, and the important part is that he worshiped one God, right? There were a lot of people that worshiped multiple gods. But there's one more thing. It didn't say anywhere that he was Jewish. In fact, it just said he was a Roman commander in the Roman military. And so this was not a Jewish man. This was a Gentile, which is weird because most Gentiles didn't worship the same God that the Jewish people did, right? And so, Caroline, if you want to pick up in verse 3, we can continue from there.
One day at nearly 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he clearly saw an angel from God in a vision. The angel came to him and said, Cornelius.
Yeah,
Yes.
Cornelius, right? So 3 p.m, this is really when Jewish people would start praying. And so here, while Cornelius was praying, God spoke to him through an angel. So Caroline, continue there in verse 4.
Startled, he stared at the angel and replied, "What is it, Lord?" The angel said, "Your prayers and your compassionate acts are a memorial offering to God."
Yes. So that's a super cool moment, right? God noticed this Gentile, and not just that, it was this Roman official who worshiped God and given to the poor and prayed regularly and did all those great things. And God was about to do something really, really cool in his life. And it starts with this list of instructions. So Brandon, pick up and read verses 5 and 6.
Send messengers to Joppa at once and summon a certain Simon, the one who known as Peter. He is the guest of Simon the tanner, whose house is near the seacoast.
Yeah. So the angel leaves Cornelius, and Cornelius calls some of his servants and soldiers in, tells them what happens, and then he told them to go to Joppa. And so Joppa was like 40, 50 miles down the coast. So it wasn't a really short trip, but Cornelius believed in what this angel was saying. But do you notice who he told Cornelius to go get? Do you remember the name of the guy? Peter, right? And this is the same Peter. This is the same Peter that was a disciple of Jesus, the same Peter that helped lead the early church, was there for Pentecost. Like the really important Peter in the Bible, that's who we're talking about right now. But Peter is Jewish. And so this is kind of where you see that conflict, that rivalry come together. And so Cornelius had a vision, but then at the exact same time, Peter was also having a vision. So, Caroline, if you want to pick up in verse 11, and you're going to read all the way to verse 16.
He saw heaven opening up with something like a large linen sheet being lowered to the earth by its 4 corners. Inside the sheet were all kinds of 4-legged animals, reptiles, and wild birds. A voice told him, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." Peter exclaimed, "Absolutely not, Lord. I have never eaten anything impure or unclean." The voice spoke in a second time. "Never consider unclean what God made pure." This happened 3 times, and the object was suddenly pulled back to heaven.
So basically, Peter has a vision. He has not a similar vision. He has a really weird vision. It says there's this linen sheet with a bunch of animals on it, and God's like, "Hey, kill those animals and eat it." And Peter says, "No, like I can't eat something that's unclean." Now this shows us that Peter is in fact Jewish, right? Because that was a rule that Jewish people had to follow, is you couldn't eat an animal that was considered unclean from God, right? And what God said was, do not say anything is not pure that God has made clean. And Peter's really confused. He's like, wait, I followed this rule that I thought God told me about for my whole life, and now God's telling me to break this rule, right? Like, that's very confusing. And so then we pick up in verse 19, where the Holy Spirit begins to speak to Peter as well. So Brandon, if you want to read verses 19 and 20.
While Peter was brooding over the vision, the Spirit interrupted him. "Look, 3 people are looking for you. Go downstairs. Don't ask the questions. Just go with them because I have sent them."
Right. So the Holy Spirit is basically telling Peter, like, hey, this is okay. Like, what's about to happen, it's from God, it's from me, right? So Peter goes down to meet them. He introduces himself. And then the next verse. So Caroline, read verse 23.
Peter invited them into the house and his guests. As Peter entered the house, Cornelius met him and fell at his feet in order to honor him.
Yep. So, I mean, we're just seeing all of these rules getting broken. So Peter goes into Cornelius's house. A Jewish man walks into a Gentile's house, and it says, as a sign of respect, Cornelius fell at Peter's feet. So all sorts of rules are being broken here. So let's keep going. Brandon, read verse 28.
He said to them, "You all realize that this is forbidden for a Jew to associate or visit with outsiders. However, God has shown me that I should never call a person impure or unclean."
There, right. So Peter's saying, like, I shouldn't even be here. Like, Jewish law says that I can't be in this house, or I can't let you enter this house. But then God showed him that he shouldn't say that any person is pure, is not pure or not clean, right? Then, like, all these people started packing into the house. Cornelius had invited all of his friends, his family, everyone to come listen to what Peter was going to say. And this is what he says. So Caroline, read verse 34 and 35.
Peter said, "I really am learning that God doesn't show particularly to one group of people over another. Rather, in every nation, whoever worships him and does what is right is accepted to him."
Right. So Peter is realizing something super important. He's realizing that Jesus didn't just come and die on the cross to save Israel. He came and died on the cross to save the entire world. That God's hope is not just for one group of people, but it's for everyone. And he really began to understand that because of what he just said. And so the cool thing that happened after this was, and I don't think we're going to read the verse for it, but all of these people listened to Peter and they loved that they felt included in the kingdom of heaven, and they all got baptized. And that's just kind of the repeating action of the book of Acts. Like, when people begin to believe in Jesus, they get baptized. And that's a really incredible thing that we keep seeing. And this situation is no different. But the big takeaway from today is that sometimes people are different than us, right? I'm sure you guys have had those moments, whether it's been on a sports team or at school or even at church, where there are some people there that are different than you. So after listening to this story, how is God telling us to treat those people? Whatever reason.
Comfortable.
Make them feel comfortable. How would you do that?
You could talk to them and smile at them.
Yep. Just be a friend, be friendly to them, be nice. So yeah, that's huge, right? And that is kind of our key question of the week, so what are some ways people are different from each other, right? That's kind of our big question to think about. And as we realize how people are different, we may begin to realize how we're actually all very similar, right? That's what happened between Peter and Cornelius. And hopefully that's what begins to happen between a lot of people in this world, right?